Ding dong, the witch is dead. He's finally gone, but of course, Justin Trudeau couldn't leave without telling Canadians to suck it one last time. On the eve of a tariff war with relations with the United States and Canada starting to heat up, he decided to leave Canada without a leader. We have some hilarious reactions today, one of which is from Donald Trump, and then we do have a video from Pierre with his first response that he gave after the news came out. I think there's a lot of important details with all of the changes that we are seeing with the presidency and of course with the Canadian Prime Minister. I don't think we've ever seen Americans as involved with Canadian politics as we are seeing today and right now. So let's get into it.
Canadians desperate to turn the page on this dark chapter in our history might be relieved today that Justin Trudeau is finally leaving. But what has really changed? Every Liberal MP in power today and every potential Liberal leadership contender fighting for the top job helped Justin Trudeau break the country over the last 9 years. All Liberal politicians actively worked to pass into law the job-killing inflationary carbon tax, a tax that Carbon Tax Carney endorsed in his book. All supported a law quadrupling the tax over the next 5 years. All voted for or actively supported Trudeau's out-of-control spending, debt, and immigration.
Whoa, immigration mentioned. Didn't think I'd see that for a while. Now that it's safe, we're seeing PP mention it pretty often. That being said, yes, the people in charge right now are still going to be the Liberals. We need an election immediately if we want to see any level of change because the same people are just in power. So that's why I found it hilarious because, yes, Donald Trump was already threatening Canada with tariffs, with, basically he was getting really aggressive on trade negotiations, and Trudeau goes, I think maybe now would be a good time to leave. Yeah, thanks, Justin. It was a great time for you to leave, you silly little goose. But, PP's stepping up. He's making these bold claims, these bold statements. And when it comes to inflation and things that are going to be changing from an economic standpoint, we are already seeing the Canadian dollar strengthen, which would be good for potential inflation concerns, which we had. As well, if we are able to eliminate a lot of the carbon tax on gas directly, that's going to bring down pricing. We know, as I used to talk about the carbon tax all the time, we know that that is going to travel through the economy if the carbon tax is removed. And this is PP, is saying he's getting rid of the carbon tax. So if he does, this could be big because if the Canadian dollar strengthens and we get rid of carbon tax and we see inflation fall, that could be really awesome for Canada, especially if we have Pierre in power and he's putting out that attitude that Canada's open for investment again and we're becoming more welcoming to businesses and we get those natural resource sectors going. It would be awesome to see the level of investment change we could see with this changing. So this is big news for Canada, guys.
All passed Trudeau's housing policies that doubled the cost of homes. All Liberal politicians helped pass catch-and-release bail and house arrest for the most rampant reoffenders, policies that increased violent crime 50%, gun crime 116%, and hate crime by 250%. So given that Liberal MPs and leadership contenders unanimously supported everything Trudeau has done, why dump him now, right before an election? Have they had a change of heart? Is it because they feel guilty that they doubled housing costs, hiked taxes, unleashed crime, broke immigration, forced a quarter of the population into poverty? No. They continued supporting Trudeau when he did all of those things. No, their only objection is that he is no longer popular enough to win an election and keep them in power. They want to protect their pensions and paycheck by sweeping their hated leader under the rug months before an election to trick you and then do it all over again.
I am not some super expert on, campaign management, but when you have your party leader retiring in essentially disgrace, let's call it what it is, he's retiring and stepping down in disgrace. I don't think they've got the chance of kind of swinging things now. I think obviously, most likely, you never know, Canadians are pretty whack when it comes to their liberal voting policies. I think it's pretty likely we're going to see Pierre win the election. So, it's really interesting that we just already don't have news on when the election's going to be happening. I would have, again, Trudeau basically stepped down as imagine a server and the lunch rush is there. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I showed up and I think I'm just not going to work. And they're like, well, you're supposed to cover this section. We have nobody else to replace you. We can't do that in time. He's like, yeah, I'm just not doing it. Like, okay, well, there you go. Thanks, Trudy.
Now, while leaderless Liberals focus on saving their jobs and fighting each other for power, the country spirals out of control, an out-of-control housing emergency, an out-of-control migrant crisis, an out-of-control $62 billion deficit, not to mention tariff threats from the United States. Oh, and another NDP Liberal carbon tax hike kicks in this April 1st. Everything's out of control.
Yep, and if we could eliminate, like I said, that carbon tax, that's huge for Canada, and then we get some more dollar parity, that would be great. But then, like I said at the beginning, we've never seen Americans so involved with Canadian politics, and here is the first reaction from an American politician from Florida, which again, why is an American politician from Florida making comments about Canada? It's funny to see because normally they're like, who the hell is the prime minister? Like, I bet you 10 years ago, none of these American politicians could have even named Stephen Harper. They would have been like, Stephen Harper. So it's interesting to see.
Now, she was gracious enough to stay. I want to go back to the Congresswoman Kat Cammack of the great state of Florida. I would be remiss if we didn't get your immediate response to that.
Well, down in the South, what we would say, Harris, is bless his heart. He has struggled. I don't know if you can hear me, but I just said, bless his heart. You know, as you said, this is no surprise to see Prime Minister Trudeau's resignation. This has been a long time coming. He has been championing Canada, America, much like here in America, America last. He's been Canada last in terms of policies, and Canadians are sick and tired of it. You mentioned the border situations that we have in Ottawa. We know of terrorist cells that have been discovered in Ottawa that have posed a national security threat to Americans. We have trade disputes, whether it is lumber disputes, potatoes. We have a number of commodities that we have struggled to actually work to negotiate a favorable trade deal. And so I think you're seeing a realignment happening in Canada, much like other places of the world, where the people of that nation are sick and tired of tyrannical rule.
Yep, tyrannical rule is obviously a problem. You know, we want to see every nation, whether it's America first, Canada first, you know, protect your population before everyone else. It's the oxygen mask theory. If you guys know, on an airplane, they say don't give the kids the mask first, put the mask on yourself so that you can help the kids. We have a bunch of struggling nations in the West right now, and the fact that the US and Canada working together are basically like a dynamic duo. So the relationship between the two that was deteriorating because Trudeau was creating a security problem at the border, which is hilarious. He was basically making it impossible for Americans to want to do business in Canada. So the trade war was heating up, all of this stuff. So seeing this start to clean up, it's great because we want to see between the US and Canada a strong relationship. It is the longest undefended border in the entire world. We should be working together.
Further than what happened to those truckers when they spoke out against Canadian policies and their bank accounts were seized. This is truly a global realignment of putting the sovereign nation first. And I think we have President Donald Trump to thank for that because, as you mentioned, and what Prime Minister Trudeau failed to recognize, was he had gone to Mar-a-Lago. And I think he sat down across the table from President-elect Donald Trump and said, you know, I don't think I'm qualified to handle this. And I think that that's why we're seeing him exit stage left.
Interesting. All right.
Imagine being called out like that. Like, yeah, he went down to Mar-a-Lago. He said, I'm not qualified to handle Trump. This guy's too out of my league. I'm going to step down. Wow, that is an aggressive call out from that American politician there. And you know what? You love to see it because Canadians need a bit of a wake-up call. And speaking of Donald Trump, we have this hilarious reaction to Donald Trump's tweet. This guy's been making some hilarious statements lately, you know, and then as soon as he got the news about Trudy stepping down, of course he had to react with something very funny. So let's get into it.
Donald Trump wasting no time, Joy, in weighing in on Justin Trudeau's resignation. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's a lengthy statement on True Social. He says many people in Canada love being the 51st state. They can no longer suffer the massive trade deficit and subsidies that Canada needs to stay afloat. Justin Trudeau knew this and resigned. Well, we know that not to be true. Canadians do not relish being the 51st state. I think a poll I saw said maybe 13% in Alberta might want to do that.
Okay, shut up, lady. Speak for yourself. It's obviously a larger population than 13% of Alberta who, wants to be the 51st state. For every Canadian watching this, if you think you are better than Americans, you're not. The entire relationship between the two economies is because America crushes it and they are the largest global economy. 90% of Canada's population lives within 150 miles of the US border. It's huddled up together for warmth, just as if we can get a little bit of economic heat from the US. Oh, if we could just survive. That's the way it works. So all of these, we would never be American. We would never be the 51st state. We basically are without the benefits of, having USD and all these other things. Like, the fact that everybody's acting like this is such an outrageous thing, I wish they would just make us like a territory, not a state, because I don't want Canadians to be able to vote in US elections. So just make Canada a territory so the Canadians can't vote, and then still get to deal in USD, and then also would get to keep more of like regional government. Because I do think, assuming we could get rid of a lot of the mass immigration problems that we have, like that would clean up our healthcare system, which has been stressed because there's been a lot of investment made into the healthcare system. So if we remove a lot of the mass immigration problem and then were to be taken over by the US, it actually would be awesome. Because, we could keep the healthcare, can't vote because I don't trust Canadians voting.
Elon Musk also weighing in, Vashi, mocking Trudeau, saying, well, 2025 is shaping up to be a good year. Trump won and Trudeau resigned. I've been speaking to some people, Chris Sands with the Woodrow Wilson Center, who watches American-Canada relations. And he says the big question for Americans right now is, who is in charge? It's going to take many months for a leadership convention for the Liberals. Who deals with tariffs? Who deals with the renegotiation of the Free Trade Pact? A lot of questions out there. Chris Sands said that, Donald Trump, take him seriously when he says he's going to slap tariffs on countries, including Canada, on all goods and services, 25%. He means it. Whether it's a negotiating tactic or not, it's going to happen. And Americans are saying, well, wait a second, who's in charge? Now, there are many committees, Vashi, out there that are now looking at this. But I got to be honest with you, right now in Washington, it's all about January 6th.
Exactly. And that's why I said at the beginning, Trudeau left telling Canadians to basically suck it, put nobody in charge during a soon-to-be trade battle. So it's hilarious that this has happened. And again, Trudeau just spent almost 10 years destroying Canada's national identity. Basically, he was trying to make it a post-national state where if you showed up from any country, you talk to an Indian who's been here for 6 months, he's like, yeah, I'm just as Canadian as you. That's obviously not the case. And it's been hilarious that the Canadian national identity has been deteriorated for 10 years, and then people go, well, why don't you just join the US? No, well, we're Canadians and we have this strong stance as Canadians and we're this and blah, blah, blah. Well, what's a Canadian then? You couldn't tell me what a Canadian was a year ago, but now that the US is looking at taking over Canada, now we know what a Canadian is. Now we know what Canada's national identity is and the principles are. Like, I would love to ask this freaking stupid lady here, and because she talks about January 6th and all this nonsense after, and it's like, okay, I would love for her to describe to me what a Canadian is, describe to me what, the national identity of Canada is, and then be like, okay, so then if that's the case, what would be the problem with, if we joined America, we could still be Canadian, right? Because it doesn't matter, because anybody who joins, it stands on the dirt and does these other things, like, you're just part of it. That's it. Like, it's all just, it doesn't mean anything. There's no culture. So like, just what's the point? So that's why I found it hilarious to see the Liberals to freak out about the potential for Canada to join the US. And I think we should. And the US, if you're watching this, Canada's national debt, you guys could print that in like 3 weeks based on what you guys spend. you could annihilate that, have access to unlimited resources. Anyways, guys, obviously, in another video, I said I'm not going to do a lot of politics. This was too big of one to cover. I found it hilarious. The reactions are funny. The way Trudeau did it is so classic. We knew he was going to do this. Thank you so much for watching, even though we won't be doing a ton of politics on this channel again moving forward. But don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.